Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and Dopamine. Ta-da! Hey, welcome to Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
I'm Bree.
I messed up again by not saying I'm Bree. Seeing what you did.
And now you've already ruined your plan for today. You're going to have to try again next week.
Dagnabbit. That's my new curse word.
Dagnabbit.
Apparently.
Connor says fiddlesticks.
I love that.
Fiddlesticks.
Which could be concerning at first.
Oh, it is.
Fiddlesticks.
I mean, and with how bad we are at filtering in front of him, it honestly would not surprise me if he is stopping himself and correcting himself before he says the wrong word.
So I have I guess this is a very topical topic, but by the time this airs, it won't be. But maybe it will be. I don't know. Let's just talk about it.
I mean, we often tell the future, so.
It's true. So, we're going back to school soon. Not you and I.
Thank
the children.
Goodness.
Oh, right? I couldn't even figure out what I'd want to go back for at this point. Being a millionaire?
How do I sign up for those courses?
I guess after
Does somebody just deposit the $1 million in my account? Do I have to work for it?
I don't want to work for it.
I mean, I'll do this for it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. This is great. Sorry, I thought I heard something outside. So, back to school. I don't know if you get like this, but as an ADHD parent, I always start the school year out with really good intentions. I plan like a schedule for Carly in the morning for when she gets up, and I think about lunches, and I asked her recently to make a list of snacks that she would like to bring to school, and I do all the the teacher lists, and I get all the supplies that the teachers ask for and stuff like that, and I'm like, maybe I'll like set my schedule to get a couple of these a month and send them every month or whatever. And then about 2-3 months in, well, I'm done. Enthusiasm is gone. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
That would get you to Christmas, which would be
That's true.
Pretty good.
That's true. I don't know if I've ever been that impressive.
No, like I think end of October, like Halloween is probably about my cutoff.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also like to go the extra step where I spend the next 3 weekends, which is the last 3 weekends of the summer, hyper focusing and rage cleaning, because the house has to be in order for all of our new routines to make sense, and all the clothes have to be put away and washed, and the kitchen has to be organized so that all the new snacks can go in their snack bins.
Make sure that his school clothes are clean and see what he has in case you need to buy new ones, and all the
because
shoes
we have to go school
and
shopping next week, and his room has to be clean and organized, which is the project we started today, because he's going to be in 2nd grade now, so he has a desk in his room, and we're going to like big boy it up. But yeah, so we started that today too.
I assumed you would understand. So I have 2 questions. Do you have a way that you find that you can stay more motivated?
No.
Same?
I mean, we are.
I try to get up and do her hair for her, and we try to like look cute for pictures and for cheer, and we try to do all the right things, and then just as they like roll out to the end, I'm like, ugh, it's about time that's done. And then I start beating myself up because there are
the mom guilt.
Yes, because of the people, especially on TikTok, who make like every school day is a theme. So they make a bento lunch, and it's like, you're out of this world, but the sandwich is shaped like a star, and the crackers look like moons, and there's healthy food, not the Lunchable that I gave my kid and went, good job, you fed your kid today, Jessica.
Meanwhile, I'm sending Connor to school, his first year of school, crying every day because he wants to bring cold lunch from home like his friends, but I refuse because it's free lunch and free breakfast right now, and I am not making a lunch when I know you get free lunch every day.
So the theme of every school day for us is Lunchable.
The theme of every school day is survive. Yes. Get there with your backpack. Get home also with your backpack. try not to hit anybody in between those times.
I do. And I do like I should feed her healthier. I should be teaching her healthier eating habits. And I watch these people make lunches and dinners and stuff. And some of them are literally stay-at-home moms, and they have the ability to do that kind of thing. Some of them might be literal nutritionists. I don't know their lives.
Right.
So and they might be failing, hugely in another aspect of their life.
Like maybe their kids can't read.
Right.
Maybe they eat really healthy.
They can read because they put a note in their lunch every day.
And probably a hand-drawn picture. Yeah. Which would be better than any hand-drawn picture I could ever do if I spent 13 hours on it. And they just, jot one up every day.
But what do you do? Like, how do they do it?
But no, it sounds exhausting, but also there's not enough dopamine there to keep it rolling for me. Like, or the mom guilt would be doubled because I would start off really strong doing like the note cards and the cute little pictures, right. And then by day 7 I forget because we overslept or the dog puked or something threw off my morning routine, and now I don't have it. And then Connor's extra sad because he's come to expect this note every day, and now mom is failing. So we just keep it really low standard at my house.
Yeah, Carly's never had big expectations, and I, like, if I did that for her, she'd think it was so cool, and she'd ask me to do it every now and then, but I just cannot figure out. I would start it with really good intentions. Mm-hmm. I think maybe that's why people record it.
Probably.
Because they're getting the dopamine hit from the video and all of the likes and comments and stuff. But man. But I'm going to finish off talking about the Dyatlov Pass.
Yay!
Whoop, whoop. I'm so excited about this. I hope I've done it justice. I know just being so busy, I haven't always been able to put what I want to put into our episodes, but this one is so cool, and I have actually now listened to, I would say, over a dozen podcasts and YouTube videos that were over an hour long about this incident, because it's so interesting and they all have a new tidbit of information. So I want to give a real quick recap. So in Russia,
my notes are gone.
In Russia. How long ago was I just gonna sing Rasputin? I can't remember the words to that either. We're screwed. Now, in Russia in 1959, originally 10 hikers went out. One of them was unable to continue on. He was not well physically and ended up having to turn back. And that was the last time he saw his 9 friends. They were all students at a local university. They were all very experienced hikers, not prone to panic, brave, good people, really interesting people who I think we would have gotten along with really well if we could speak Russian.
Great friends of ours.
They would have been besties. And they all continued on their hike. They did have one partner in the hike that wasn't a student from the college. He was a older man. He was in his 30s. It's not older man, but it was compared to them.
It was back then.
And eventually, a few days later, I guess a few days is about a week or two later, they finally sent out a search party because this party never returned. They found a tent that had been cut open from the inside. And slowly but surely, they began to uncover bodies in very, very strange circumstances of death. None of them survived except for the one that went back before the hike had really gotten going.
Which has got to feel crazy.
I know. He did live a long time, too.
At first, you're like, oh, I feel like such a failure. Like,
right.
I wish I could have continued on. This sucks. And then you're like, oh. Like,
and the survivor's guilt, because he was friends with them, and then you just live with that the rest of your life.
Yeah. If I had stayed, would I have made it, like, could I have made the difference?
Yeah, or one more person, one more pair of hands, But, that would be rough.
Oh.
That one's tough. So they were all found dead in very strange ways. None of them seemed properly outfitted. The first two that they found, one of them had bitten a chunk out of his own hand. It seemed that they had been sort of sitting in a tree watching their campsite. There was skin on the tree, seeming like they may have fallen or had a really hard time climbing the tree. It was a cedar tree. They'd cut off branches, tried to start a fire. So a lot of weird circumstances there. Then they found 3 more, and the 3 more were found then later. They were in various states of just bad news. One was found in a small river with the water running through her mouth. One was found missing a tongue. 2 were found without eyes, which I don't think I mentioned before.
No, I don't think you did.
There's so much to this story that I didn't get to mention that. Now, I will also mention that this is 2 different places that I got this information. So perhaps by the time it got from one source to the next, it had been exaggerated. Maybe she did lose her tongue. She did not have her tongue in her mouth. It was Lyria? I can't remember exactly her name. I'm terrible at recapping this.
Some lady.
Some woman. I don't even know if she's one of the hikers. So yes, they were found, unfortunately, scattered about. The rest of them were found later on. These were months apart, really, but within a certain amount of kilometers of their campsite. So now we get into this. Because it's such a weird, almost like exciting thing, which sounds weird because it's really tragic, but what the heck happened?
Right.
I don't know that I even started in on some of the causes that people think.
I don't think you did.
Good. So there are approximately 75 theories about what's happened.
What?
I'm not joking. I obviously do not have time to go over all of them. And of course,
just take my 20 minutes too.
In the next few episodes.
All right. Let's just dig deep.
Let's just play the YouTube videos and record it.
Perfect.
Those are good too because they have the pictures and so about 75 theories out there of what happened. Of course, as you get down the list, they get wild. Of course. I mean, as anything does. But I just want to tell you some of them that I've heard that I thought were interesting, some that I think might be plausible, some that have been mentioned as really plausible but seem absolutely wild to me. There are some people out there who truly believe that this is completely fake, that this never happened. There is truly too much documentation and hullabaloo about it that it has to be real. It has to have happened. These people lived and died, and there's record of it.
Right. Like,
bodies went home to families, and yeah.
The Blair Witch Project ruined it for everybody now.
Right.
Ever since the Blair Witch Project, everybody's like, no, I think it's fake.
And I guess this is a good time to mention, too, that, like, if you Google this, you can find articles on creepypasta or stories on creepypasta. And I wonder if that kind of thing lends itself to them thinking it's fake.
Right.
I think the very first time I heard of this incident was on creepypasta.
Okay.
I don't think it was actually like the real documented case of it. I think I heard it on the creepypasta. And then, of course, whenever I heard that, like, Dyatlov passed, I'm like, what?
That was real?
No, that's not real. So, I wonder if that contributes to that kind of thing.
It probably does.
But there is a plethora of documentation and proof that this truly did happen. There are even images. One note I want to make is that originally all of these people's deaths were reported as hypothermia. So even though they had other injuries, and I think I did explain some of the causes of death in the last episode, it was originally reported as hypothermia.
Okay.
So it's really hard to say if it was just poor documentation or if they just There's so much to say. There is also a lot of proof that when the site was found and they were trying to find all of these people, that the government and the investigators and just the volunteers that were out there were really just trying to get it done. They just wanted to find them, they wanted to report it, and they wanted it to go away.
Right.
It is reported that some of these records were locked away by the Russian government for many years after the incident.
They were like, nothing to see here.
Yes. And I don't know if the reports have even been completely released yet, or if they've been altered or what. But there's just a lot around that. It's the Russian government was very involved, which seems very strange.
Right. Because I don't feel like the US government would be involved if some hikers went missing and died.
They might help look for them. The president might declare a state of emergency.
He might make a comment or a statement, but
urge people to look for them. Urge people to take classes to learn how to survive in that kind of weather and stuff like that.
Right.
But not bothering with records and searching and sending
locking
agents
things
out.
away.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Mm-hmm.
So this is also a really, really highly experienced group of hikers. Back then, the hike was considered a level 3, which at the time was the highest level. Now it goes from 1 to 5. 5 is the highest level. 3 would be like an intermediate. Okay. You'd want to have some skills. But this at the time was considered the highest level. I don't know what it's ranked now. I don't know. I think we talked about this a little bit last time too, but I just want you to keep that in mind. These weren't prone to panic. They were all highly intelligent students, and
it wasn't their first time.
Yes. If you remember correctly, one of them had been shot on a previous...
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
One of them had been bit by a snake. I mean, they weren't just...
They're used to...
They weren't us.
They've even dealt with emergencies
Crazy
before.
Emergencies. Yeah. So, I just want you to keep that in mind while I go through some of this. Few little facts that I don't think I had time to throw out while I was talking about this before. There's so much. So, Sasha, the man who was the older man of the group, kind of thrown in, didn't really know them, but they said he cooperated and hiked and was friendly and everything was going fine. He liked to be called Sasha. That was his name, so that's what I'm going to refer to him as now, because that gives me a reason not to say his full Russian name, which I have probably done poorly. He was one of them with his eyes missing. When they found his body, he was holding a notepad, and the detective went to the body and took the notepad and opened it up and said, "Oh, it's too bad he didn't write anything," and then stuck it in his pocket. And record don't really show that that's anywhere around anymore. Very strange.
Weird blank notebook. Just gonna put this over here.
So it's either a really nice notebook or
been looking for one of these.
Like leather coated or something. Or, I mean, that's just kind of weird. The other thing, and I don't recall if you and I talked after we went off air because I was so stoked about this.
Right.
And I told you a bunch of stuff, and I can't remember if I told everyone this or if I just told you this.
I'm having the same problem remembering, so.
So I guess if this is a recap, sorry. Hopefully you have the same memory problems we have. So Sasha also had a camera on him. Thing was, the group had 4 or 5 cameras that everyone knew about. This was a camera none of them had seen. Yuri, who had gone home early, said that shouldn't have been there. We never saw that camera. That wasn't a part of our trek. We never saw that. So, the other thing I want to mention about Sasha is that a lot of people in a lot of the different scenarios I've read and heard about say that Sasha very well could have been a KGB agent.
Okay.
And Russian KGB. Yeah.
Okay.
He had a lot of gaps in his history, like a special agent would. Unexplained, mysterious gaps of time where he couldn't really explain where he was or what he was doing. He also was a military man. Like, he was confirmed having been in the military. All that said, he was missing his eyes when they found him. The woman who was missing her tongue is the other one who reportedly was missing her eyes. She had a really weird trauma. She had a torso trauma, but she also had a trauma to her right ventricle in her heart, which is super weird. I guess I really should have looked up what causes that kind of thing, but that is a really strange injury.
Yeah.
That almost makes me feel like a heart attack would have happened, and I'm 100% guessing. I have no medical background at all, so I have no idea.
So I'm not sure.
I'm making that up.
I'm not sure either.
It's really interesting thought. Maybe I'll remember to look it up at some point, and I can like do a come back to this and be like, no, I was dumb then, or like I was completely right.
I'm so smart.
I'm a genius. So the first thing that people think could have happened, and this is very reasonable, is simply an avalanche. Like,
right.
That happens on mountains. Now, a lot of people in what I read said this area wasn't prone to avalanches. I mean, it can probably happen anywhere, but it didn't happen here very often, or much at all documented. There are really no signs of an avalanche. Avalanches are quick, and they're loud, and they're destructive.
Like, people would notice.
Yeah, you'd see broken trees and large rocks out of place, and it just seems like there would be big, obvious signs.
Right.
But it makes sense, too, because an avalanche would be something that could cause the kind of injuries these people had, could cause the panic. Now, there again, if these were trained hikers, would they have panicked?
Right.
They would have been for this.
Trained for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then to not, dig out their shoes and stuff.
Right.
If you remember, none of them had fully shoed feet when they walked away. Some people had one shoe, some people had socks.
Which is even weirder.
It's so weird. So, that's a pretty obvious one. There's another thought that these folks maybe had built a snow wall to protect themselves from the wind and then place their tent right next to it. And unfortunately, it snowed so heavily that night that the snow wall built and built and built and then collapsed on top of them.
Hence,
this would have, yes.
Having
all of
to
the
cut
trauma,
out.
cutting out. Yes, not having your stuff. If it's thousands of feet under snow, you're not getting your stuff.
Right.
Thousands of feet.
I was going to say, I don't know if they'd even be able to dig out if it was thousands of feet.
But it also does seem like if they could dig themselves out, they could get other stuff out.
Right.
So that's a very strange one. That would also coincide with some of the injuries. A lot of the injuries they said were like car crash injuries. That
blunt force.
Yes, yeah. Strong, heavy, not a person punching you or something like that, but truly heinous force. So there is something called let me find it so that I can say it correctly. It's called katabatic winds. It's a really weird phenomena where pretty much on mountains where when the weather is just right, it kind of forms almost like a funnel cloud without the cloud. And the best way I can think to explain it is literally a punch from the wind on your tent.
Really?
And
nature's crazy.
It's insane. And so that's very scary. And something like that would have been loud. It would have been sudden. It would have hit. It would have hurt. And it very well could have caused them to panic. It's a very unknown force. Like, I'd never heard of it until I started doing this. Perhaps something along those lines. I did listen to, just trying to find her information.
Something.
I did something cool. Just doze off and I'm sleeping all of a sudden. A Russian woman does believe that she has debunked the whole thing. She's sort of in the same line. Her last name was Hajeska. And she said, this is kind of a mix of conspiracy and reality. She thinks that how do I say this? She thinks the hikers put up their tent and then they started doing their nightly routine stuff, getting ready for bed, getting ready to sleep, and they got set up. And then back in the 1950s in Russia, geologists were looking for uranium and would set off these bombs. And the bombs would destroy the surrounding environment sometimes. And they were known to cause injury. The Russian government never told anyone when or where these geologists were going to be looking for this because it was probably an act of war of some sort. And her theory is that they set one of these off and a tree crushed them in their tent.
Okay.
And at that point, They started to crawl out and they couldn't get their gear. It was too heavy to move. They were injured, and that's when they kind of dispersed, confused, and they think the first two bodies that were, she thinks the first two bodies that were found, the two by the tree, were dragged out of the tent. She thinks they were staying at that point by that tree. So they were dragged out of the tent and died there.
Okay.
Then they were stripped because, of course, the rest of them needed the clothing. Mm-hmm. And that's when they went to... A few of them went to go get medical supplies. Because apparently, even back then, we were keeping our camping supplies apart from our campsite. Because bears.
Right.
At least that's my assumption of why they would do that. But they did have a little spot where all of their stuff was. Not their clothes and stuff, obviously, but their medical supplies and their food and yeah. Mm-hmm. So some of them went to get that stuff, the ones that were in the best shape, and they succumbed to the elements. They didn't take the right course to get there. They were disoriented, which this... I mean, if it knocked
they got hit by
down,
a tree, sure.
Yeah, and I suspect the environment would look vastly different in that case, too. And so those, I believe it was 3, died. And the remaining 4, yes, my math is mathing. The remaining 4 then built the extra shelter that they were found in, and just to also succumb to the elements. Considering their injuries from, her issue, the fall and everything like that. Then she goes on to say that along with this, there's a good chance that the government came in, swept the site away, reset it up to look like kind of an avalanche situation, and then left and came back with search parties. And the reason they did this was because they didn't want anyone else to know that these geologists were looking for this. Because at this time, the USSR was bad.
Bad.
When you or your family made a mistake, you and your family suffered.
Yes.
They tortured you. So it was either the government or these geologists. They went in, they staged it to make it look different. And that would be the explanation for the single line of footprints.
Okay.
They swept it all up, all clean, and then they made this line of footprints to throw people off. That would explain some of the injuries, the tent, It kind of does. I mean, kind of wraps it up nicely in a package, but it is also a little conspiracy-ish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Still involves the government coming in and clearing some tracks.
Exactly. A few other things. There are an indigenous people, sort of like our Native American population. They're the Mansi population. Some people say that it was a Mansi attack. They attacked these kids for being Russian.
Get off our land.
Exactly. And the Mansi people say no. And actually, the Mansi people have named the area something about like a curse. They won't go there.
Oh.
They lost some hunters a long time ago there, and they won't go back.
It's a dragon.
It honestly, yes. That's my favorite new theory. 76 theories.
We figured it out.
Exactly. The other thing that kind of goes along with what she said is the KGB agents running experiments or weapon testing, and that Sasha was along to keep them off of the site of this testing. Mm-hmm. And they were, I believe it was 200 kilometers off course when they made camp. Very easily could have wandered over onto it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that would explain his presence. That would explain why he just randomly popped in with this group of 20-somethings.
Why he had a camera that
exactly.
shouldn't have been there.
Yep. The other thought that's along that same line is that several of them were KGB agents. 3 of the men, including Sasha, were KGB agents and knew along this path they were going to meet up with some Americans. And the deal went bad, and the Americans wiped them out. Now, these kind of go along because one of the injuries specifically was a well-known KGB torture technique death. And then, the missing eyes, the missing tongue, the fear of these people just running out of their tent in no proper clothing. These experienced grown people being terrified. If you can survive a viper bite, I feel like an avalanche would be really scary. You could still collect your wits.
Right.
So it's really hard to say. Of course, a Yeti. Obviously. We do have some images from cameras that they had. The good cameras. Sasha's camera, of course, the film was bad.
Of course.
Uh-huh. So there is an image of what looks like a humanoid figure by some trees. The next image is one of the men in a brownish coat, who you could probably liken to be the same guy, just kind of off in the woods in a very Yeti
he was
pose.
standing funny and
walking along, swinging his arms. The coats are bulky, they misshape you, they're...
Yeah.
It's interesting. So something really weird is that night there were reports of ball lightning, which is a really interesting phenomena to look up over that kind of area from people that were down in towns and around the area. And of course, that not only equals ball lightning, but aliens.
Obviously.
What else would ball lightning be?
And that would explain everything.
Exactly.
Aliens.
And you could also come again to that guy who's lurking in the woods who seems like weird.
Yeah,
it's a weird picture. A few of the sort of wild ones are... Oh, you know what? No, let me talk about this one first. Infrasound. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I don't think so.
So this is a weird one. Infrasound is a sound that things can make that we can't hear, but our bodies react viscerally to it. It is like a danger sound. Almost like when ants leave the ground during an earthquake or before an earthquake, or animals. My dog can sense that it is going to storm before it storms. Even if it's beautiful sunny out, she knows it's going to storm. We can tell that she's acting weird. It's along those lines, and what it does to your body is it causes just full, complete panic. It, makes you lose your senses. So a very logical, reasonable person who knows what to do in the snow could be forced to cut open their tent and run. Could also force him to hurt or fight with the people he's with.
If he's panicking. This feels like the Scarecrow.
Black tapes to me is what it sounds like.
The Scarecrow in Gotham. He has that spray that causes panic.
So that is one that I didn't look too far into because honestly it makes me feel icky.
Yeah.
So I didn't look into that one too much, but they're thinking
we don't want to think about what the government can do.
Exactly. So perhaps it was an infrasound. And then we'll get to the weird ones. A methane gas explosion, which seems really unlikely because that seems like it really should have left a mess.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't know much about methane gas explosions,
sure,
but I assume there would be a way to tell.
Yeah, something.
Right?
Some people say it was a time slip, and these people traveled in time somehow. Paranormal activity, obviously. And then, of course, just you've got your aliens, you've got your other theories of weird stuff that happen. I mean, kind of use your imagination. You can find somebody who says that happened.
Right.
But we just truthfully don't know what happened at the Dyatlov Pass. And it is so intriguing. It's so interesting. And it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
You never know what these kids who went to bed and woke up in the middle of the night to something.
Right.
What was it? Snow falling on them? A guy? A Yeti? An alien? Did they wake up in 2022 and not understand anything that was going on?
Right. They're like, wait.
And come back in a panic somehow. I mean, it's just very weird. I'm so intrigued by it. I will gather some of what I used to look up some of this to share with you guys. I've learned a lot of this through a long period of time, so I don't even know everywhere that it's come from. But I'll share the ones that I've used most recently. And if you're interested, look it up. I shared some and not even all of it. I also did want to mention really quickly, I'm running out of time, that some of this changed a little throughout the tellings that I heard. Some of the injuries were reported in some of the videos, and then the next video wouldn't mention it, or that kind of thing. So you really wonder where it was skewed, where it happened, where these reports are coming from.
Right.
It's embellishing.
And what has become urban legend versus actual fact.
And even now, I mean, I could have misspoke in some way or misunderstood something I heard and misspoke it. And now it's fact because you guys listen to it on the podcast.
I heard it on the internet, so it must be true.
So it's really interesting. And, the other mystery today is that I actually have no idea what your topic is.
Good, because I hadn't decided until just now.
You just Googled, birds.
The whole time you're talking, I was like, gotta write my topic right now. That would be a new low for me. No.
That would be kind of incredible, especially if you pulled it off.
Right? No, I am back to real estate today.
Ooh, that's been a long time.
It has been, and this was kind of a surprise for me. I had a whole different topic this morning when I woke up. The reason I'm talking about real estate today, this episode will premiere after all the changes have taken place. But if you have heard anything on the news or anywhere recently about real estate, there have been some big changes in how we have to do business, and like this crazy court case and a settlement and all of the changes that we've been preparing for, they have to take place this Sunday, August 17th.
I have not heard any of this.
Good, because I think it's all stupid, and I'll explain why. Some people, I'm actually surprised you guys haven't seen anything, because they're primarily targeting sellers, and there's a class action lawsuit that is happening. So like it comes up on Facebook sometimes, people have gotten postcards, all this stuff talking about these changes and how people might be entitled to money, and it's just craziness. So here's my take on it, and I want to remind everybody again that I only worked for a lawyer's office for 8 months. I am not a lawyer. I am not an expert on these changes. I am only speaking on how I understand it from the information that has been given to me via my various associations and my personal opinions on this, which I probably shouldn't state, so hopefully I don't get sued or fined for it. But I'm going to be a little honest about it, because that's how I am as a realtor. I will also say this is the information I have as of today, which is August 15th, which is 2 days before the changes that are supposed to take effect. And we all know that things can change daily. So a new precedent could have been set, or new laws could have come out, or new rules since I spoke about this information. I also want to say this is my own view from my own little slice of the world in West Michigan. It is possible that things are being done differently in different parts of this state and obviously in this country. There are terrible people out there doing real estate the same way there are terrible people out there that are bankers or CEOs or doctors or lawyers or any other profession in the world. I'm not defending the fact that there are awful realtors out there, but I do believe that at least most of us are just trying to make an honest living. There are many of us that make more money than we're worth, but most of us are just trying to make an honest living, and we don't make as much money as most people think, especially with how this lawsuit has been blasted to people. All of that being said, this was a lawsuit brought against realtors, the National Association of Realtors, big name practices. I believe like Keller Williams was named, and some other of the big nationally known companies. And basically, we're being told that we were misrepresenting the commission structure. So in an effort to cut down on the number of these class action lawsuits or this process, and supposedly to protect small brokerages like me, our national association, the National Association of Realtors, settled on this case. They are admitting no wrongdoing, but they're paying out a whole bunch of money, and it basically comes down to forcing us to change how we do business. The issue is that in most real estate transactions, I'm going to say residential real estate transactions, up until this point, the seller pays the commission for both sides of the real estate transaction. So they pay the commission for their realtor, and then they pay the commission for the buyer's realtor. This has been common the whole time I've been in real estate. I believe it's been common for much longer than that, especially in West Michigan and in Michigan. This lawsuit argued that doing that was effectively price fixing, because it doesn't allow the seller to not pay the buyer's agent commission, and it doesn't allow the buyer to negotiate what their agent is being paid. But here's the thing. At least in the contracts I use or used for my transactions, which come to me from my association, which I pay to be a part of, my sellers always had the ability to negotiate both sides of their commission. When I fill out this contract, it asks how much total the seller expects to pay. And it gives, it's blank lines on a contract that we fill in. So it could be a percentage of the purchase price. It could be a set amount. It could be a couple different options. And then below that, we had the option to then take that amount and split it between any other professional that might be working on this file. So we can split it with a transaction coordinator, a sub-agent of the seller's agent, which could be like my assistant or somebody else that works in my office, or the buyer's agent. And I've been in real estate 5 years. This is the way the contract has been the whole time. So by having those blank boxes and those lines in those situations, my seller could decide, maybe, and I'm just using random numbers here. I'm not allowed to talk about what I set my commission at because that gets into price fixing. So I'm using very general numbers. But if I was charging 6% of the sales price for the commission, and then the seller could decide, okay, of that 6%, 3% goes to you and 3% goes to the buyer's agent. Or 4% goes to you and 2% goes to the buyer's agent. Or 2% goes to you and 4% goes to the buyer's agent. That's always been their choice. They could put 0 in that box. So 6% goes to the seller's agent and 0% goes to the buyer's agent. They've always had that choice. And then on the flip side, the lawsuit also says that the buyers have been misled to believe that the real estate services they received were free of charge, and therefore we took away the right of a buyer to negotiate the commission for their agent. And I will admit that I have been guilty of this a little. I do explain that the cost of my services for a buyer until now was built into the sales price of the house. So the seller would pay it as part of the transaction, but you're paying for the house. The buyer is the person that brings the check to closing or brings the mortgage to closing. So even though it's built into the price, the explanation was there that they might not be paying for it out of pocket, but it was coming out of the sales price of the house. I will also say that any good agent knows that that is negotiable, because I've done it at least a handful of times on transactions where my buyers didn't have any more wiggle room to raise the price or offer more, or even if they were just family members of mine, I would write in the negotiation that the buyer's agent or the buyer's agency brokerage is willing to accept a lower commission of 2% or 1.5%. So again, this has always been negotiable, and good agents or knowledgeable agents have always known this, and maybe buyers and sellers weren't aware, but it is something that should have been explained to them. Now, the Department of Justice has stepped in and said that this was price fixing, that it was dishonest, that we were basically lying to people about who paid for what and how it was paid for, and said we can't do that anymore. But all they've changed, so in the past, the way we communicate these commission rates is just a small little box in our forms that we put on our multi-listing service, our MLS. Just a small little thing that says buyer's agent commission or sub-agent of the seller or whatever gets this percent. It's private data that's only for other agents, but it's always been right there on the page. So every time I show a house, I know exactly how much the seller is offering to pay the buyer's agent. No issues. But the settlement decided that price fixing, how we fix it is we're no longer allowed to state on our MLS, our multi-listing site, if we are offering a commission to the buyer's agent or what that commission is. Oh, also, we're supposed to say compensation now, not commission, because that's apparently important. So we're still allowed to have our sellers pay the buyer's agent compensation. We're still allowed to have our sellers offer seller concessions. We just can't put them on our website anymore. We just can't put them on our multi-listing service.
So where do you put them that now?
Now we just have to communicate between the agents. So when somebody requests a showing to show a house I have listed, they then immediately call me or text me and say, hey, are you guys offering buyer's agency compensation? And we have to respond. That is the only thing that changed about this, that changes this lawsuit.
That seems like it made it harder for everyone, even the buyer and seller.
Also, it's still in our forms when I'm doing a listing appointment and I'm going through my listing agreement with my seller. It is still very plainly written out in my forms that they're offering this much for compensation and how it should be split between the seller's agent and if they want to offer it to the buyer's agent. Then they added another part in the form on whether or not they're going to offer seller concessions, which seems silly because that's usually been a thing that our buyer and our buyer's agent is something they negotiate as part of the offer. So why would I be telling my seller in the beginning, oh, you should just offer this much in seller concessions? Why would I not be waiting to see what people are asking
well,
for?
Well, what if I didn't care about your carpet because I worked at a flooring store, but I really cared that I want solid core doors. So I want you to make sure I have the money to fix those doors, but I don't really care about the carpet. But you decided that I'm going to care about the carpet. What?
Yeah. So, and then the only other thing that has changed is when working with buyers, we now have to require them to sign a contract with us prior to even showing them any houses. And this form not only states our duties and our relationship to the buyer, but also conspicuously mentions my compensation. So, this may be the first time I've met you, I have to tell you, or I have to lay out my responsibilities and my duties, and that's all fine. There's always been a form for that. I usually have them sign it, after we've met once or twice, but whatever.
Sure.
But now I also have to tell them, oh, by the way, my services cost, 3% of the purchase price. But don't worry, because we're going to try everything we can to make sure the seller pays that for you, either through buyer agency compensation or through seller concessions. But here's this form. I just met you. Please sign this saying that you're going to pay me thousands of dollars someday if I help you find a house.
When contracts already feel rather intimidating in general, because now I'm kind of bound to you, and I don't know if I want that because I haven't even sat down with you. I don't know what you're like.
And I just said that I'd pay you a bunch of money regardless of what I'm going to find out about whatever house that I actually like. So I don't know who these rules are supposed to help besides old rich people that don't want to pay extra to sell their home anymore, even though they were able to buy the house with the sellers paying the buyer's agency commission. But any buyers, especially first-time home buyers, are usually already tight with money. They've already had to scrape together everything they could afford to have a down payment and cover closing costs. And most first-time home buyers can't even do that. They're using programs that require as little as 0% down, or maybe 3.5% at the most with an FHA loan, and are already usually asking for seller concessions to help cover the cost of their closing costs. Our veterans, our VA programs are advertised as 0 down, but that only happens if they get the seller to cover their closing costs. Otherwise, our veterans still have to pay their closing costs. Now these buyers that are using low down loans or VA buyers are not only having to negotiate with their lender about all of their costs and their interest rate and all of that, now they have to negotiate with their real estate agent about how much their real estate agent wants to be paid, and then negotiate with the seller and the seller's agent on how much they're willing to pay their agent, and the price of the house, and the price of the seller concessions, and all of those things.
Does this...
So...
Okay.
And now they're potentially being asked to come up with extra money to be able to pay their buyer's agents, or they're choosing to not be represented in these situations and just go with a listing agent who is already contracted to represent the seller in the best interest of the seller. So now we have unrepresented buyers that have nobody looking out for their best interests, and they're then probably still paying the seller's agent commission through whatever the seller's agent negotiated for them in the contract. On top of all this, we're being forced to do these changes. We're being forced to have these new contracts, and we're still being told that it is in everybody's best interest to continue to have the sellers pay this buyer's agent compensation, which totally makes sense, because if you were a home buyer and you had finally saved up 20% to put down on a house, plus $7,000 extra just to cover your closing costs. And you really want to use your own agent because you know that's how you're best represented to make sure that your interests are looked after. And 2 houses pop up on the same day. And everything is equal about these 2 houses, except one is the purchase price is cheaper by 3%, and the other one is offering 3% towards buyer's agency compensation. Which one are you going to? Are you going to save yourself a little bit down or a little bit on a purchase price, but then have to take money out of what you were going to put down for your 20% to cover your buyer's agent fee, and then potentially not have enough to put 20% down and raise your payment because now you have to pay for private mortgage insurance? Or are you going to choose the house that's offering that might cost a little bit more, but will at least pay your agent so that you don't have to come up with any more money out of pocket? In most cases, you're going to choose the house that's offering buyer's agency compensation. Essentially, again, all we've done is made it more confusing, added more forms, and made it harder for our first-time home buyers and government-backed loan holders to get a good loan and get a good house. And we've just made it harder for them to negotiate. So I don't know if they were trying to punish realtors or real estate agents or who they were trying to punish, but it is my belief that really all they've done is punish buyers, first-time home buyers especially, young buyers, people that really needed the extra help. The only people they're helping are sellers that really didn't need it anyway, because we're in a seller's market. They're already making way too much money on their houses. And you're going to get some good agents that, now maybe we're going to start being more negotiable with our commissions. Maybe our commissions come down a little bit. But in most cases, that's not how it's going to work. And what other profession do you know where the Department of Justice comes in and says that we can't make commissions on the sales we make? You don't purchase your car. You don't negotiate your car purchase price based on what your salesperson is going to make. That doesn't even come into the discussion. You know that you're going to pay for the car and the commission is going to come out somewhere, and that's all done in the backside of it.
And I don't have to worry about it. I also feel like as a first time, honestly, if I was going to buy a house right now, it would be technically my 3rd home purchase. I have no idea what any of this means. This is so confusing. It was already confusing. I feel like it's confusing on purpose.
Yes.
And now it's more confusing. And for what? Who got anything out of this?
Right. And if you were trying to just cut realtor commissions and make us earn less money, then why not just set caps on what we can ask for or right. What we can charge? Why?
And why?
Yeah. And what right is it of the federal government to decide how much money I can make? They don't decide how much the CEOs can make, and they make millions or billions of dollars while they're paying their employees $13 an hour. I just don't get it. But yes, it is confusing. Don't be scared. Find a good agent. Don't let this scare you out of being properly represented in your home buying process. Again, these have always been negotiable. You're not going to hurt my feelings by trying to negotiate what I'm getting paid. Have the conversations with your realtor. Make sure you are represented by somebody that is looking out for your best interests. And that's all I got. I don't know what I was going to add there. Yeah.
That's so strange.
If you're selling a house, make sure you're paying for buyer's agency compensation. If you're buying a house, don't get mad at your realtor for having to sign a form even though all you want to do is see one house.
Don't get mad that you have to pay somebody to do this for you.
Yes, that's a whole different...
Try doing it yourself and see how well it goes.
It's not fun.
All right, well, mine was funner.
It was funner. It was so much more fun. That's I had to think about it because obviously we are recording 2 topics tonight or 2 episodes and
telling all our secrets.
And I had to decide which topic to throw into that one. But I thought it was a good balance with your much more fun topic.
Well, it's also really good to know. It's good to know that that's something you should think about. So I'm not putting it down at all. I'm joking, of course. I appreciate that you have a topic. But it just seems so pointless.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Dungeons and Dopamine podcast.
Nuh-uh.
Truth.
You can listen to us anywhere you stream podcasts and also on YouTube.
Truth. And you can support us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/dungeonsdopamine.
Sure can.
I thought you'd found it.
I was trying to pretend I could go off memory, but I can't.
I would have been impressed. No, I'm not.
You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit as well.
Yay! You can reach out to us on any social media. You can also reach us at dungeonsdopamine@yahoo.com. Yahoo! Oh no!
That's a new email address.
At yahoo.com. I messed up my drawing. Okay, that takes superiority over this podcast.
Obviously. Dungeons and Dopamine is edited and published by Argyle Pigeon Productions.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Love
thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye.